guys, welcome to another episode of Bro History. It's Henry Zamota and Danny Abdeljabbar. What's up, good sir? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
I could be doing better.
I hear you're a little under the weather, huh?
I don't want to say I'm not under the weather. So the other day I woke up. It was right after we spoke on Saturday. Like I woke up the next day feeling like just fatigued, along with like a weird chest pain, and I didn't feel other symptoms of COVID-19 or anything like that. Like I didn't have like a fever or felt the chills or had a cough or anything like that. However, I'm not sure if it was just like the burden of depression from being inside for being at a shelter in place, or if it was something to do with COVID-19 and their mild symptoms. But I shut it down, so I've been indoors since Saturday. Since we last spoke, I haven't left my home, which is quite. It's not as fun as it sounds.
No, I imagine
to be completely honest.
No.
It's been about 4 days so far. However, there's been people who haven't left their home in like 40 days since the very beginning of March. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I mean, I feel like I'm one of them. No, I mean, like I've left the house, but I've definitely been stuck in the
You've
same
left
place.
your home. Like, do you leave your home daily?
No. Every couple of days I go out for either some supplies like groceries and shit, or I'll take a walk to my apartment. I'm quarantined at my girlfriend's place right now, so.
But you don't like walk around during the day at all?
Nope. Not at all. No.
So I'm used to, I at the very least walk around during the day for a little bit, but I guess for the next week or so, I won't be doing it at all. But the good news is that Chris Cuomo came out of quarantine.
Oh, he came out of the closet.
Chris Cuomo came out of his quarantine in Northampton, and thank God for that, because we really needed him to spread truth on what's going on with COVID-19. You know, he really is probably the best journalist we've had in the 21st century. And I'm just really happy to have Chris Cuomo back with us. So thank you, Chris Cuomo.
All right.
I look forward to future I have ever seen on TV. The whole CNN crew is just a collection of like the lamest people that you've ever met. You have Chris Cuomo, who is an insecure baby, who kept on like having these statements while he was in quarantine, like quarantine is so hard. I just look outside and minutes turn into hours, like stuff like that all day. And it's like, I'm rethinking my position as an anchor. Like I need to think about what really matters. And he has this like a televised walking out of quarantine stream or broadcast, and he walks out. It turns out the guy wasn't in complete quarantine. Like, people saw him out and about, so it was all for show and attention. And he's just a complete insecure. He's Fredo. He's Fredo from The Godfather. He is the brother who is not like the smart and ambitious one. But I don't know. I was just incredibly turned off by Chris Cuomo, along with pretty much everything he does. He's definitely the type of guy who, when he was sick, he's like, Mommy, I don't feel good. Mommy, I don't feel good.
That's not fair, man. Everybody feels that way.
He's definitely that guy. Mommy, I don't feel good. Oh, but I don't know. Whenever I have an opportunity to shit on Chris Cuomo, I will take that opportunity to shit on someone. Hey, is there a journalist that you really hate who's on the right?
Journalist I really hate that's on the right now. I don't know, maybe Hannity. Probably Hannity.
That would be fair. That would be fair. I would jump on opportunities to shit on Hannity when I can as well.
Yeah.
Like when Daniel McAdams called him retarded on Twitter
TV?
and.
No, Twitter.
Not on TV. On Twitter, and you got banned from Twitter for that.
Wow.
Yeah, he was eliminated from Twitter.
I read an
for calling
interesting
Sean Hannity a retard.
on the Hannity question. I read an interesting An interesting. All right, well, I guess we're back.
Is it saying that we're live again?
Yeah, yeah, we're back live. Apparently. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties.
You see it brought. Can you tell for sure?
Oh yeah, I can tell. I'm seeing it.
I hate this I hate technology so much. But yeah, I was asking, is there a journalist on the right? Oh yeah, so Sean Hannity.
Right.
Where were we? Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
so I was going to say that for Hannity, I read an interesting study that was done recently about how Hannity, um, him denying, the seriousness of COVID-19, and he was doing it pretty hard for a while. Evidently, there's a pretty strong correlation to uh, areas that are big Hannity viewership and like infection rate and death rate. I'll have to send it to you. I was reading through it, and they controlled for a bunch of really interesting shit. And like, obviously, I don't like Hannity, so I'm like, yeah, let's read this shit. This is the truth. So take it with a grain of salt. Of course, correlation is not causation. But I found it really interesting, and it was a very, very well done study. And they looked at a ton of things. They looked at how, when did he start talking about COVID-19? They paid like 5 independent reviewers to go over his transcripts and like find all the instances that he was talking about it and how he was talking about it. They even compared it to Tucker Carlson's review, which Tucker, actually did a much better job at like basically telling people like this is serious, you should pay attention to this. And Hannity was basically like, yeah, it's the flu. Don't worry about it. It's fine. Um, so
there's a sharp contrast between the two.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's funny because they're 1 hour apart from each other. And another thing that they found was like, depending on where you are in the world, or in the country, really, if you're a 55-plus-year-old person, right, typically you're gonna go watch some TV. If you're conservative, you're gonna watch Fox News, and that's gonna happen after sundown, right? Like most people will, turn on the TV at sundown and just relax and then go to bed after a while, right? In that age demographic. And if you happen to be on the East Coast, you're probably going to catch Hannity because he's on the later time slot. But if you're on the West Coast, you're probably going to catch Tucker Carlson because he's an hour earlier.
Here's the thing: the people who watch Hannity are ancient. That's why they're probably dying to it. No, I'm serious. Like the people.
No, they talk about that too. They definitely do. But it's funny because they say a ton of things. Like they say how it might not even just be about the older demographic of people watching it, but just people that were watching it in general who might have been asymptomatic and then just don't take it seriously, and then as a result infect more people in those regions. It's super interesting. I definitely have to send it to you. It's an ongoing study. Like they're still currently adding more to it. But there was like a pretty interesting dip, or increase, I should say, in like infection rate for the areas that they polled when he was talking shit about it, and then it went down as soon as he started talking like, "Oh, this is serious. Like, you guys should wash your hands." Interesting shit. Interesting. I don't like Hannity for the third time.
All right. Well, I got my gripes out about Cuomo. You got your gripes out about Hannity.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to actually start the show.
Yeah.
So, I guess most of my attention over the past week has been towards the financial markets. It's been a ridiculous week, specifically for the oil markets. So you probably saw on Monday that the price of oil dropped to negative.
Negative 40,
So
I think I saw was the lowest.
yeah, so it bottomed out at 40 negative, not $40 a barrel, negative $40 a barrel. It's like in South Park, when they're on the Marklar ship. They're like not an ionic tractor beam, but a negative ionic disruptor. So yeah, it dropped down to negative $40 a barrel. I think it ended at I think the market closed out at around negative $36 a barrel. And essentially, what an oil future contract is, it's an agreement to buy or sell a certain number of barrels at a predetermined date and time.
Right.
at a predetermined date and price, excuse me.
Hmm.
And investors, what they do is they buy futures to gamble on what the price will be down the road, and they only profit by guessing right. So investors, they liquidate their holdings before they would actually take delivery of the oil. They're not going to put the barrels of oil in their pool or in their basement.
Yeah.
These are thousands upon thousands of gallons of oil that they're purchasing. So there's really no way to store it. And the May futures contract was about $18 a barrel on Friday, and the price then just started to collapse. Like it just totally just started to collapse on Monday. And the price, when I started paying attention to it around when the price was around $7, I was like, this is crazy. It was around $7 or $8 when I started noticing it. Then I sold it at $4. Then I sold it at $2.
Hmm.
Then I think what did I text you when it was at
You
four
texted me at
dollars?
$2, and I'm like, no, you texted me at $2.30, and I'm like, wait, is that a typo? Did you mean $23? And then I looked, and I'm like, holy fuck, it's $1.50. And then like within an hour, it was in the negative.
Yeah. Then I sold at 150. Then it was at $1, and then I was like, okay, this is about to go negative. And I was like, how can it go negative? And then I realized that we have negative interest rates, so why couldn't we have negative oil?
Right.
So the price dropped down to it bottomed out at negative $40 a barrel, and then it eventually settled at $36 a barrel, which I mean I don't invest in oil futures or anything like that, so
That's
I'm
just a
not used
random
to these
thing to invest in.
rollovers. I mean, I know people who do it, but I don't invest in any of that. But thank God I don't, because I would have had a fucking heart attack
Seriously.
if I was on the line. Because you have to, if no one purchases it, if no one buys the contract, then you're stuck with the delivery. Like you have to receive those barrels.
Right. You have to collect the oil because there are regulatory concerns about that. So
So
once
you
you
had to
have,
pay.
you have to pay somebody to take the contract off you because you're definitely not going to keep oil. Like if you're just a random futures speculative investor, this is just not going to happen.
So basically, it's like garbage. It's like you pay someone to get garbage. You have to pay someone to get junk. Like
To
I'll
get rid
pay
of
you
it.
to remove this dirty, gross bed out of my place.
Yeah.
Just come. I'll give you $40. Basically, oil became garbage overnight.
Yeah.
You had to pay someone to get rid of it, like it was like you know some type of trash that in the on the side of your house. But let's talk about the reason why
Yeah.
it dropped,
Yeah.
because I've heard people say really dumb stuff about it, and some people have been talking about that it's deflation, and I was like, what?
Yeah. No, it's not.
How does that even come up that the price of oil dropped because of deflation? It's clearly a supply and demand related issue.
Right. Where
And
the supply is super high and the demand is super low.
well, yeah, there's nobody
Nobody's
is
doing anything.
going to work. Nobody is driving.
Yeah.
There's no planes are up in the air. There's less industry, less goods are being produced. There's just there's no demand for oil right now because people aren't in their cars driving, and manufacturing plants aren't producing as much things, and planes are not up in the air. So obviously, um, oil was going to have a significant drop like that. But what's interesting about it was that I think this was due to storage, because there was too much oil being stored where there was just nowhere to put it.
Right.
Like that's how you see a crash like that. Because the price right now is not still in the negatives. I think last I checked, it was around $18 a
Right. It's
barrel. So
it's it's gone back up for some reasons that we'll talk about later. But yeah, it's stabilizing.
it's stabilizing, and that's probably where it should be, around that $18 a barrel mark, based off the um, just based off the current demand for it. But that was crazy. I've never seen anything like that before in my entire life. It's funny because I wonder if the Federal Reserve is going to be like, oh look at the price of oil is down. I guess that means that we can just keep on printing money if we keep on adding to the stimulus bill. Um, but what I took out of it is that um, I think a lot of these oil companies are going to go bankrupt, as I said last time we spoke,
Hmm.
and specifically these fracking companies are going to end up going bankrupt,
Yep.
and ultimately they probably should, because shale oil is so much more expensive to extract compared to, for example, Saudi Arabia,
Right.
Saudi Arabian oil fields. Like the price of oil is significantly higher. Like I think about 40 to 80% higher, the cost of extracting oil from crude, from
From
it's not
shale.
crude, from shale
Hmm.
rock. So it's never going to really be able to compete with oil extractors or oil producers who have better fields. Like just a matter of where you're getting the oil from.
Yep.
There's some places in the world where you can just suck it out with a straw, and there's some places that you have to go dig really deep into the earth's crust and start banging on rocks to get it.
I mean, to that point, the unfortunate part about this, and is that it's not going to be the big your Chevrons, your Texacos, your Exxons. They're not going to be the ones that end up going bankrupt. It's going to be the smaller producers, you know, that are not going to. They don't have the cash flow to be able to sustain that long term. And I was actually on the phone just not too long ago with a friend of mine who works in the oil industry, and we had a pretty candid chat about it, and I'm hoping to try and see if we can get him on the show at some point. But the thing that I heard about, and the question that I asked him is, why the hell should Americans give a shit? Like price of gas is low, so that means the price of like gasoline is low, right? Isn't that a good thing? Well, I guess the thing that I was kind of informed about, and the empathic liberal that I am, definitely bid onto this argument is that okay, it's not going to be those big companies that go under. It's going to be the smaller ones. The smaller oil producers, the local ones, the ones that might create maybe 100 to 1,000 jobs. Smaller oil producers, but nevertheless good, high-paying work that doesn't necessarily need like a higher education for, or like a whole lot of technical know-how, and that does have a pretty big impact on the economy. When the smaller players go under, the bigger players are just going to scoop them up. And it's the bigger players that are probably going to end up with the subsidies. Because they're too big to fail. So thinking about it from our last conversation when we did that like bonus live stream on what was it, Saturday, right? Um, while I still think that oil is probably not a great venture, and that we should really start taking this as an opportunity to think about alternative energy, and I don't mean exclusively solar and wind and things like that, but I also include nuclear. I think thinking about it from a human capital perspective, it does suck that the price of oil went down that far, and it's going to impact a lot of people, a lot of communities. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs, and frankly, the big players that should have a rainy day fund, set aside for shit like this, are going to get the money from the government, from the Fed, if any money is offered to them in the first place. So, it kind of sucks.
Well, and another thing to add to that is that this means, because a lot of these producers can't withstand market volatility,
Volatility,
or at
right?
least,
Mm-hmm.
or at least major volatility. This means that ultimately the price of oil is going to go up
Right.
because there's going to be less supply. So there's going to be
Long
less
term, that
extract.
is right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, long term, the price of oil is going to go up to where it was, maybe even more, probably back to 50, around 50 to 60 barrels of where it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Because even after the shutdown stops, I mean, I'm assuming that this is going to be a slow process for normal commerce to start again. So I think whatever plan is released in New York, and I'm sure every state is going to be pretty similar outside of New York. They'll have like some type of suggested guideline that they follow, where it's probably I have no idea of how they're going to let people go back to work in major metropolitan areas, but um, I'm sure it will be slow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even after that, people are still not going. It's going to be like a slow transition. And even when everyone's transitioned back, the consumer spending will most likely be down as well.
Yep.
There'll be less traveling on things like trips. There'll be less road trips, less trips to the mall,
I mean, at this juncture right
more
now,
more
people
eating
are only
more eating
spending.
in.
I mean, at this
So
juncture, people are only spending on like essentials like food, which is like kind of the definition of a depression when people aren't spending outside of like the bare essentials, because a bunch of industries crumble because of that. So if this goes on, for much longer, it could be a problem.
well, here's the thing. So the oil companies that are going to actually benefit from this in a long time, you're right. If there is any subsidies that are given, it will probably be given to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, they're the ones who are going to benefit from the lack of market competition
Correct.
that they would normally have from a conglomerate of smaller producers. So in the long run, like Saudi Aramco will probably uh,
Benefit from
take a
this.
nice
Yeah.
benefit from that. Gazprom and the major extractors in the United States will benefit from this, but
Mm-hmm.
it does suck. But I mean, industries need to be able to withstand market volatility, and fracking at the end of the day it still is not a profitable industry. It costs a lot of money, and a lot of the revenue that they're bringing in just goes in to pay off their debt. Like they're not making profits.
Right.
So that industry was doomed to fail anyway. This is kind of just putting instead of saying too big to fail, they should start saying doomed to fail. Like
Mm-hmm.
that should be the word for
Probably going to fail.
doomed to fail. Like I don't think that was going to last long anyway. Um,
Also, like I
I
think
used to think it was, but not anymore.
I personally think we should take another look at these speculative future tradings in general, whether that be you know allowing people to nix on contracts because of supply and demand. Like if the demand drops this volatile, like this hard, unexpectedly, you should be able to cancel that contract. I think it's a little stupid that suddenly I have I'm sitting on $40, but that's not the root of the problem. The root of the problem is a bunch of gamblers in the stock market that are like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna I'm gonna bet that this is gonna be worth $40 in 2 months. Like maybe if you don't have a place to put the oil at the end of the day, you shouldn't be betting.
My buddy, my buddy was like, he's complaining because there's no sports to bet on right now.
Bet
So
on
I was
oil.
like, yo, I got plenty. There's plenty of things that you can bet on right now. You should bet on oil futures.
Jesus.
See how that works. That would be
Imagine like an
thrilling for
ESPN
you.
crawl for that, right? Like
Oh my! If ESPN just turned into
like
to like
CNBC.
Fox CNBC or Fox Business, where they
Yeah.
just did. I mean, CNBC is more geared towards investors than Fox's. So
Mm-hmm.
Fox Business just completely changed their business model because of no sports.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just gamble on commodities and future
Commodity
contracts and
trading.
stock exchanges.
Make it sound
Now,
exciting.
but they
Yeah.
have the same. They have the same crew. They have the same like
The same
people.
guys. They don't know
The
what they're
same
talking
people in the
about,
booth.
but like
Yeah. Um, the same thing's gonna happen to airlines as well.
yeah, totally.
Like
Mm-hmm.
there's gonna be less flights. Like
Mm-hmm.
flights are probably flights are super cheap now. What I haven't looked at a flight
Oh, I did recently.
recently, but
Yeah.
what have you found? Like
I
what's the
get
cheapest?
the email from Scott's Cheap Flights every now and again, and I saw one for Puerto Rico round trip for $80, and I'm like, what? That's great.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's cheaper than my bus ride from New York to Virginia
Yeah,
in a really shitty, crappy bus
and it's one
that
way.
the majority of people on it are using to smuggle drugs from one state to another.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, it's crazy. That's not going to last for long though,
No.
because eventually, well, even though demand for flights isn't going to be there, the supply is not going to be there to create the demand.
Hmm.
So the there's going to be less airliners that are traveling, and who knows what restrictions are going to be regarding travel
Yeah.
and with planes. So I would expect that the price of a plane, like from New York to London or New York to Paris or wherever in Europe or New York to California, will increase a lot. Like, what's the average price right now from a flight from New York to Europe? Prior to
$1,000,
COVID-19, prior
$1,000
to
maybe,
COVID-19,
1,000 to $1,500.
2015. That sounds about right.
Mm-hmm.
I bet that's going to increase significantly, like a year from now.
That is
Um,
if there's major disruption in the industry and there's fewer service providers and therefore fewer flights and higher demand, therefore higher costs.
so yeah, it ultimately just depends on like it's going to be a combination of regulations along with just how many airliners are left. But this actually is a good transition to something else I wanted to talk about because I want to ask you, how do you feel about large companies with access to capital getting a piece of these low interest taxpayer based loans?
I think it's total bullshit.
So there's been a number of reports. I looked at this AP report, the Associated Press,
Mm-hmm.
and they wrote an article, I think earlier today, and it was about these companies that have been receiving these SBA loans, these loans that are meant for small business owners, and not only are they publicly traded companies, they are companies that have histories of fraud. They have companies with these companies that have expressed that to their investors that they were likely going to fail. It's just a shit show, and it's like what we
I'd say I'm
totally
surprised, but I'm
expected.
not.
No, I totally knew this was going to happen, and I'm pretty sure I said this. There's going to be massive amounts of people fraud involved in these loans. In loans and insurance claims, there's going to be massive amounts of fraud. According to this article, at least 94 companies that disclosed receiving aid since the program opened April 3rd were publicly traded. The AP found some with market values well over $100 million, dollars, and about 25% of the companies had warned investors months ago, while the economy was humming along, that their ability to remain viable was in question.
That's
In its
something else.
review, in its review, AP found examples of companies that had foreign owners and that were delisted from U.S. stock exchanges or threatened with removal because of their poor stock performance before the coronavirus hit. Other companies have had annual losses for years. So these companies are being bailed out. So it's another thing, companies that are getting bailed out when they were going to fail anyway,
Mm-hmm.
too doomed,
Doomed to
too
fail.
doomed to fail instead of too big to fail,
Mm-hmm.
doomed to fail. Because most companies are not successful. Like most, not just small businesses, but many large corporations are not successful and do not make profits. They deserve to fail. They should fail. And their assets should be bought up by other companies who are successful and do make profits and do make money for their investors. And I understand the justification for the PPP loans being that you need to save employment.
Right.
These people are depending on these paychecks. Here's the harsh reality, though. Nobody starts companies to make jobs.
Yeah, they
But people
started to make
don't
money.
start. They start a company like when you're starting a company, when you're starting a business, you're not doing it with the intention of creating jobs. You're doing it to make money. If you're investing in a company, are you going to invest in a business plan that has something that has the ability to generate revenue, or something to generate more jobs and less revenue? If you're an investor, and if you're gonna provide capital to an entrepreneur, then you're going to choose the one that builds revenue with less jobs. So it comes to the responsibility. Like, do companies have a responsibility to create jobs? I
I
don't
mean,
think they do.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way, you're right. But that's not necessarily how you know um, our friends in Congress view it, right? They view these companies as job producers, and if they fail, then we'll lose jobs, right?
Well, that's their ass because ultimately the people who are voting. There's way more employees than employers. You know what I
Right,
mean?
for
So
sure.
they're they it's in their interest to regulate companies and to keep people working because the last thing they want is high unemployment rates. But I want to go through some of these companies that
Yeah,
the
let's do
AP
it.
selected because they did a full report and they went through. They found about 94 companies that were disclosed, and they uh, they I guess revealed these large some of these weird cases where they were approved for these loans that are essentially meant for small businesses. The first one they wrote about was Wave Life Sciences USA, which is a Boston area biotechnology company that develops new pharmaceuticals. They received $7.2 million, and they're based out of Singapore. So they have foreign ownership.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. The questions of I don't think that should automatically eliminate you from a program like this.
But it is
However,
one flag.
it is something. You're like,
Yeah.
okay, they have foreign ownership. And for the past 3 fiscal years, they lost 102 million, 147 million, and 194 million dollars. And they have zero products out in the market.
Right. So $450 million lost in the last 3 years, and no products in the market, and they're like based out of Singapore and not the United States. That's
Their holding company is based out of Singapore.
yeah. I mean, that's three strikes.
You let that one fail.
Probably.
Wave Sci Alliances USA Incorporated.
I mean, but they are a biotech company and they're developing
They are
pharmaceuticals.
biotech, so anything with the word biotech and pharmaceutical means that they deserve money because they're going to obviously think of the cure, right? Like, let's just start throwing money and stimulus into every single pharmaceutical company in the nation, and we'll just see who gets the cure because that would obviously is the best way to do it. Uh, I mean, that was probably maybe that's what they were thinking when they approved
Probably.
the loan, seven
Probably.
point two dollars. I mean, this company has such big losses though.
Mhm.
It seems just like a waste of money because at the end of the day, what is $7.2 million going to do for this company that has such large has such tremendous losses over the last 3 fiscal years?
Mhm.
So
I mean, if, I'm not an accountant or anything, but in fairness, a lot of companies that are moving this much capital around on an annual basis have creative ways to account, right? And it's possible that they're posting $102 million, $150 million, etc., in losses every year, but actually they're doing just fine, and they're just using creative accounting principles to make it look like they're at losses, so that they can get some tax benefit or something like that, which is a different thing altogether. But presuming that this is true and it's not creative accounting and they have been losing money, yeah, sounds like to me that coronavirus or not, they weren't going to last for very much
well, there's no
longer.
way they can be making money because they don't have any products out in the market.
Right. Right.
So they don't have anything that's generating revenue. They're
Mm-hmm.
just they're a pharmaceutical company researching stuff in the lab.
Mm-hmm. I mean, IP isn't a product on the market, but if they have intellectual property, that could have value, right? But we
Well,
don't know that.
Wave Life Sciences USA Incorporated. Maybe we're missing something. Maybe
Yeah.
they have the cure for cancer. Who knows?
Who knows?
Uh, you guys can look it up. Um,
Here's
all right,
one.
Shake Shack.
Yeah. Shake Shack. I love Shake
Shake
Shack,
Shack.
by the way. Do you like Shake
Shake
Shack?
Shack. No, I don't like Shake Shack.
Mm. All right.
I don't like Shake Shack because I always feel like I'm going to basically shit out my intestines after I eat it.
That's funny. I don't feel that way, but I do feel like they're like cheating me out of money because their burgers are really small and they're very expensive, but it's actually quite tasty. So I don't know.
Have you ever waited on a line for Shake Shack?
Yeah, it's impossibly long.
I don't understand what the appeal is for any food item or any restaurant where you would have a line that will take you 45 minutes to get to the fast food cashier, because that's what it's a fast food joint, it's not some fancy
Fast
restaurant.
casual.
It's a fast food restaurant. It's just, they branded it a little bit better than,
McDonald's.
Wendy's, McDonald's and Wendy's, but that's what it is. It's
I mean,
just
my first job ever was
better quality
McDonald's.
fast food. There's nothing wrong. There's no shame in working at
Oh no,
McDonald's,
what I'm saying is that they used
or
to have
anything.
long fucking lines too, and that used to like surprise me at a lunch hour. It'd be like lines out the door, you know?
Well, Shake Shack, their lines are unprecedented. Like, you'll pass them and they'll stretch outside their door, like across the block,
Mm-hmm.
for a burger, and then people will wait. They'll be like, "Oh, we're going to Shake Shack. It's going to be a 4-hour experience through my day."
Mm-hmm.
I I've never had. It could be the most delicious thing in the entire world. Like, it could be, um, you know, the best food ever. I can't think of a good analogy right now. However, I don't think any food would be is I don't think any food's worth like a 10-minute wait. Like, if I go to my favorite restaurant and there's it's gonna be 20 minutes, sir. I'll be like, oh, finding another place. That's how impatient I am when it comes to like wait times. But all right, enough about Shake Shack. So they received a $10 million loan, and they employ thousands of people, and they are a profitable business that does have reserves. There was so much public outrage when Shake Shack received this money that they ended up giving it back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
So they ended up giving it back. Now there's this company called Lindblad Expeditions, which is a cruise ship and travel company with 650 workers,
Hmm.
and they have a branding deal with National Geographic. They got a $6.6 million loan at the end of March. The business reported of having about $136 million in cash on its balance sheet. So it looks like they had the capital to pay their employees due to the market shift or due to the pandemic.
Right.
Because I guess going on a cruise ship would be the last place that you want to go. But it's just interesting because, like, the $6.6 million loan, and I'm not an accountant and I'm no businessman either. However, I don't understand like what expenditures that can that are really going to save with a company with a company that size. Like, is it literally just
Payroll.
going just all going towards payroll? Like, they're not able to go into their cash reserves to pay their
I
employees?
mean, if they have 650
There's
workers, right? If all of this went to payroll and associated administrative costs, it sounds like every person would get like 10 G's. Like, I'm bad at math, but it would be some ridiculous amount of money. So it can't all be going to payroll. It has to be going to something else. And even
Well,
more
here's the thing,
importantly,
though.
as you pointed out, they have $137 million in cash on their balance sheet, right? So you're telling me $6.6 million is really gonna, oh, that's what's gonna help save them.
Well, my question is the cruise industry going to rebound after this? How long is it going to take for them to rebound?
I don't know because their season has already started. Like their peak season, so they're gonna
Their
move.
peak season, they're going to be losing money all
They're
year,
gonna be losing
and
revenue right now for sure.
but is there going to be a demand for cruise ships
Probably
next year,
not. I
next
mean, like,
season?
even if we, open up the country, and Daniel Kennedy here, one of the viewers asks if we think certain parts of the U.S. should start opening up. Maybe we can get to that in a second. But even if we opened up the country, we're just like, fuck it, let's go ahead. Like, out of fear, people aren't going to want to, like, go into close quarters with a bunch of randos, strangers on a cruise ship. I mean, the Diamond Princess, was it, from Japan, the one that had all of those coronavirus victims. A lot of them were from the U.S. and even the Navy, USS Theodore Roosevelt. that they had a bunch of cases of this. Like cruise ships are like perfect for spreading viruses. So like even if we do decide to open everything up, people just I think out of fear, people aren't gonna buy it. I'm not going on no damn cruise for any time soon.
I've never had the desire to go on a cruise ship. I've never been on one, and even if there was no COVID-19, I would never be interested in spending money on a cruise ship. Some people love them and live by them for their vacations.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really. I'm not. I don't like the idea of being stuck at sea with uh with the only activity being bingo, right? And water aerobics. Is that what you do? Is that what you do?
It's also like
And
the
drink
yeah,
bingo and
drink
water
a
aerobics.
lot of
I'm,
drinking.
I'm describing a retirement home.
I mean, it's also like a captive audience. So like once you're there, you're fucked. You know, like unless you bought like the all inclusive package that gets you like all of the food and drink that you want there. It's like everything costs money and everything is expensive because they can charge you whatever the fuck you want. Because what are you going to do about it? You know, you're on a boat.
I feel like cruise ships are only fun for like 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds who like are hooking up with girls or vice versa. I think that's who I remember liking cruise ships, like like my friends in high school and college who were like, "Oh, I went on this cruise ship and I hooked up with this girl from Iowa. It's
Right,
crazy."
right. And I caught
Um,
COVID-19 too.
and I caught
Crazy
COVID-19 and gave
fucking
it to my
story.
grandfather. Ha ha. The
He's
funeral's
dead now, but
tomorrow.
that's funny.
Ah. Yeah, that's not funny,
It's
but
not funny, but that's pretty much the idea, you know?
yeah. Um, their response was, when this crisis hit, we had two business planning cases, one substantial layoffs and furloughs, and two receiving these funds and not impacting our employees. Spokeswoman Audrey Chang wrote in an email. Lindblad is a very rare travel company that has not imposed any layoffs, furloughs, or salary reductions to date.
Because they
So
got
again,
$6.6 million.
they got $6.6 million, but again, like here's the thing: these. I'm not saying either or is right, but these employees would get ultimately like this is going to depend on if this industry bounces back or not. It could, I don't know enough about the cruise ship industry to tell you or give you a projection, or I've never been on one, but I feel like at least culture has shifted a little bit where people are not going to see that as a attractive vacation plan. Maybe prices will be a lot lower, and maybe it does gather steam. But for next 5 years or so, I wouldn't think that it would be a
A good idea.
lucrative investment opportunity
Yeah.
or industry as a whole. So that is that's that. And the point I'm trying to make is that these layoffs are going to come eventually. You know.
I still don't buy
So
the. I mean, they have plenty of money on hand. I don't buy
yeah,
that $6.6 million was really what made them decide to not furlough or lay off their employees. They had enough
no,
money
it's.
to
I
pay
mean,
them.
you have I mean, your finance team is trying to uh, preserve and to bring in as much uh, money as possible.
Right.
So Quantum Corp, a data storage company based in San Jose, California, that has a workforce of 800, paid $1 million penalty last December over allegations that accounting errors resulted in overstated revenues. So they
So they were cooking the
overstated their
books.
they were cooking the books. They had to pay a penalty of $1 million, and they received a $10 million loan.
Well, there's that $1 million back. They netted 9 million.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Um, their response was, "We would most certainly be forced to reduce headcount. We owe it to our employees, who have stuck with us through a long and difficult turnaround, to do everything we can to save their jobs during this crisis." You want to talk while there's a siren in my background?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I
I wonder if people can hear it on the
oh they
stream.
can definitely hear it on the stream.
These
Um,
fucking sirens kill me.
the For those of you watching on the live stream, this is the raw, unedited version, so you get to understand what we have to do to cook,
There's fucking
clean this up.
sirens every 5 minutes, and I hate them so
Yeah,
much. They're worse, honestly, though, without COVID-19,
yeah, yeah.
which
It's been a
is
little bit
interesting.
quieter lately. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Marone Bio Innovations. So they had to pay 1.8 million in 2016 after the SEC alleged its COO had inflated financial results to hit projections that it would double revenues during its first year as a public company.
How much do they get?
They got 1.7 million in SBA loans. And these SBA loans are like they're not meant for these types of companies, you know? Like they're not meant for biotech or life science companies like or pharmaceutical companies. They're meant for like a dental practice. You know, they're meant for manufacturing startups and things like that, or like a metal like a metal fabrication manufacturer or something like that,
Right.
or an auto dealer, or
Right.
like they're not meant for these really capital intensive industries like biotech and cruise ships and stuff like that. Like those that's what these SBA loans are for. Like the intention is that you give them to the companies that were immediately shut down. Like that was the purpose of the plan for this lending was to give it to restaurant owners and retailers and really anyone who had to shut their doors due to the stay-at-home orders, not go to pharmaceutical companies and biotech companies and data storage companies. Like I'm pretty sure you can still store your data, right? Like what's preventing them from storing their data?
I don't know.
Like what kind of
I
you
mean,
have a skeleton crew in there? You
you
can't
got to
you have
run the servers, and you need like people to, you know, maintain that shit. But I imagine that's at least some of that can be done remote.
I would imagine a large percentage of it can be done remotely. I mean, you can manage you know more you're more of an IT person than I am,
Mm-hmm.
but your IT guy he has to be at your office to like hand out computers and like to fix things on hand, but he could do a lot of his work from home if he had to.
Right. I mean, we don't have an IT guy; it's mostly me. But yeah, yeah, that's precisely correct.
Like you can do a lot of you can fill out we can work on these tickets from your VPN, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
and log into people's computers and fix stuff. Like you don't need to to
Yeah, I mean,
be
if you're
there
set
unless
up
you need
right, yeah.
if,
But there's still
unless
going to
you're
be some
dealing with
physical,
hardware.
like for data storage, there's still definitely going to be some physical infrastructure that's going to require like hands-on, like on-site. Um, but I don't know.
How many people does that require?
I don't
Like
know.
two, three people?
I have no idea. I don't work in that sector, unfortunately.
The
So
labor force can't be that high, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
Um, the so Pam Marone, the chief executive, said the company shouldn't be punished for what happened with the SEC because it had clean audits for years now. She described the investigation as a body blow that cost its investors and drove its stock price under a dollar. She has had to take on 40 million in debt and is still digging itself out of the financial hole. People don't realize how tough it is to be a small public company like us that's not yet profitable, she said. We can't just go to investors and say, okay, open up your wallets.
So instead, you
People don't
say,
know how it is to be a small public company that doesn't make any money. You don't know how it is to own a company or a corporation doesn't make any money, and to keep on giving like loans and stuff. How do I justify more loans?
I
I'm
mean,
looking at this
like,
company.
look, in 2016, she got slapped by the SEC, right? And they had to pay that $1.8 million loan. She says she's been clean since then. Sounds like she did her time, right? She literally paid money. Their company paid money, and for several years they've been under, investigation and have come up clean. So that's fine. That's one thing. But just like the tone that she has about this, it's like our company isn't profitable, and we think that the SEC's investigation is the reason why, right? It's like, lady, you inflated your financial results to make it look like you would double your revenue during the first year as a public company, right? Whether that was a mistake or not is irrelevant. You did that. That's what their company did, and they were punished for it, right? So when she says, we can't just go to investors and say, okay, open up your wallets, like, yeah, you can't, which is why you inflated your numbers so that they would open their wallets. So, that does raise a totally fair question about whether or not a company like that deserves, a bailout, deserves cash. They did. I'm sure that there are other bio innovation companies out there that didn't cook their books. Shouldn't they get that money?
I'm on the company's website. It's looks like a biopesticide company. So I guess they make environmentally friendly pesticides
Cute.
for the agriculture sector. Um, it works? You ever see did I ever show you the guy? His name's Joseph Carter, Mink Man.
No.
This probably is not relevant to like large farms or anything like that, but what this guy does is that he's hired to go to farms and kill all the rats with his dogs and his mink.
That's cool.
So he's a ratter. So he rats with his dogs, and he has a mink that goes into hard to reach places, filters out the
Like
this
scares
filters
out the
out
rats,
the
right?
rats, and the
Mm-hmm.
dogs will
Go and kill
will
them.
kind of clean them up, and it's oddly addicting. This is a YouTube channel.
Cool.
It's very addicting. The guy's like a real life Pokemon trainer. He has a falcon. He has all these different dogs. He has his minks.
Is a
He just
falcon? What does the
he has a
falcon do?
falcon. I think he falconeers as a hobby.
Okay.
He's just an animal trainer
This
and
guy
like
deserves a
slash
net.
handyman.
This guy deserves a Netflix special.
I mean, his YouTube channel does really well, so I don't think he even needs one.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that would be awesome. He's just like a animal trainer. He doesn't train big cats. He just trains, small wild animals to be productive in his field of ratting. It's
Interesting.
interesting. I would check it out.
So, like, why did you
Uh,
bring that up? Did he also get like a $1.8 million
no, I'm bringing it up.
stimulus?
The reason why I'm bringing it up is because he does pesticides,
Mhm.
does that, but with like dogs. I guess there's a lot more to it than just rats and stuff like that. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. It's something interesting I wanted to share with people who are listening. It's a extremely entertaining YouTube channel called Joseph Carter Mink Man. Um, yeah. So I guess the point of the going over these companies is that a large amount of these companies shouldn't really be getting these loans that are taxpayer based, that are government guaranteed, meaning that they're backed by the taxpayer. I think it's ridiculous.
And in many cases,
Uh,
these don't have to be
And
paid back either. So,
in many cases, if you, they're basically grants.
mhm.
If you, uh,
If you keep your workforce on for a certain period of time, yeah, you don't have to pay it back.
yeah, they're basically grants, and and a lot of these companies, I really do predict that a lot of these companies who receive these loans are going to end up going bankrupt down the road anyway. It's going to be like the show Bar Rescue. You see these restaurants, like John Tafer can go to so many restaurants, and you
Hmm.
look them up on Google, and they're like closed indefinitely.
Right.
But
And some people don't know how to run a business. It's a thing.
it's incredibly difficult to
Yeah.
run a business.
Yeah.
All right. So you wanted to talk about going back to oil prices,
Yep.
because I know we didn't really address this when we were talking about the immediate spike of oil prices.
Right.
Um, Now you were looking into this regarding, I guess, Trump's recent statements about shooting down Iranian ships that are harassing. I almost said the word harassinating. Uh,
They're
that are
harassing us.
harassinating us, that are harassing U.S. ships.
Yeah.
Apparently, that's been going on for the past months. I actually haven't really been following what's been going on there. over the past couple of weeks too closely.
Yeah.
So fill me in on what you saw and how and why you think it relates to the immediate spike in oil.
Yeah, for sure. So I actually thought this was like a good segue, because our show does cover a lot of the Middle East, geopolitics and stuff like that. So this was right up our alley. But I was researching the oil stuff, and today the oil's back up, and yesterday I think the oil went up too, and I was wondering why, like, oh, what happened? And there was this theory, and I actually got this on oilprice.com. I don't know how reputable oilprice.com is, but they definitely told
It
me what
is.
the oil price was.
Well, I look at oilprice.com.
All right.
It's good. It's fine.
They had this article on there, and it said oil jumps after Trump orders Navy to shoot and destroy Iranian gunboats. So, for some context, Trump tweeted today something to the effect of, go ahead and kill them. Like, told the Navy, like, if they fuck with you, just shoot them. Like, go for it. And apparently there was a pretty big rise, and they make some good points, I think. So the first point I think that you might want to think about is that there have been a number of Middle Eastern conflicts, or like that zone's conflicts, which have affected the prices of oil in the past, right? As an example, we remember the attack on the Abqaiq oil facilities in Saudi Arabia back in September. That actually triggered a 20% price jump in Brent crude, and that's our domestic, like, U.S. Measure for price of oil. And also similarly, the assassination of Iran's General Qasem Soleimani, or Salami, as we like to call him on the show, that also caused a spike, right, in the prices of oil. And so I don't quite understand why, but if I had to venture a guess, it would probably be because if there's insecurity in areas like Saudi Arabia, or like in the Middle East, like in the Straits of Hormuz, as an example, then the global supply of oil and the way that it moves around is disrupted, and therefore the supply is reduced. And if the demand stays high, then we have a bit of a problem, right? It would be the inverse of COVID-19, right? Where right now we have a super high supply and a super low demand. So I guess some people on the interwebs are positing that Trump, stirring up the pot in Iran, was a calculated effort. I don't want to give him too much credit for this, but I think it's a fair question to ask. Just stir up a little bit of noise in Iran. People stop thinking about COVID-19. Maybe the oil prices go up a little bit, right? And he did it on Twitter. It's a total Twitter diplomacy. I don't actually know if he sent a formal order to the to the Navy or anything like that. So I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't really think that holds any water, because
Water.
that would suggest that Trump's other
Provocation.
provocations at Iran were due to the same motivations, and he does that like every month. Like every 3 months there's like a big one, and there's constant like, we'll destroy you, we'll totally annihilate your society.
Yeah, like fire and fury, like the world has never seen, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's. I mean, that was North Korea,
Yeah,
but like
still,
that
same idea.
that same idea. But I could have killed all of you type statements, but I didn't. I refrained myself, and I just killed your general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of there's that tick for tack has been going on for so long, over the past year. I don't think it really has too much to do with oil pricing. Maybe he saw that as like a convenient way. He just picked the time.
I mean, what's funny is that,
place.
like,
I think the Navy had came out and said that there were some, I guess, close calls between
yeah,
ships
yeah, for sure.
over in the Strait area of Hormuz. So he could have just be kind of picking and choosing his battles with Iran, because it's not like the U.S. wants to go to war with Iran at all. Like anyone realistic in in the State Department or in the White House, like they just want like constant like low level escalation with them. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to actually go to war with them because war would just be so costly and so unproductive, and it would cost so many lives,
Yeah, for
including many
sure.
American servicemen's lives. And just at this point, like, it would just be a disaster,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
on all of our lives in America.
But yeah,
I don't think
without a
anyone
doubt.
realistically wants to go to war,
Everybody
but
likes
there
a
is an
good
interest.
saber rattle, though. You know,
Yeah,
like
but there's a strong interest, and probably going to be this interest, indefinite interest in this constant level of low tension with
right,
Iran.
right,
Um,
and there has been quite a bit of that. You know, and just to wrap on the theory of Trump, like he says some shit that on Twitter specifically that like contradicts himself all the time. So back in 2018, November 21st, 2018, he says oil prices getting lower, great, like a big tax cut for America and the world. Enjoy. $54 was just
Pump
$82.
that oil, King
Thank you, Saudi
Salman.
Arabia, but let's get lower. And then like recently he's talking about like hey, maybe we should chill out with the
It,
low oil
look,
prices.
get too
Let's
expensive
cut
now.
production.
It's cheap. You should domestic oil.
Yeah.
He likes like, yeah, cheap oil. Like, oh shit, someone's
Oh shit, that's bad. Oh, yeah, we should
never mind.
cut production.
Rich cup production. I spoke to King Solomon. Wonderful guy, great king,
Yeah,
good king. I like the king. I'm getting to like him.
yeah.
We decided to
I think that's the
cut
only reason
production.
why I entertain the idea of Trump just start saber rattling a little bit to try and get the oil
I
prices to
mean,
go up, because it sounds like something petty and stupid he would do to like, try to turn shit around. Take it or leave it.
I mean, it's possible that he's thinking that, or someone told him to do that
Yeah,
to get an immediate jolt. But
yeah,
I don't think that, like, I think that doesn't hold more weight than just a theory. I think mainly the antagonistic relationship with Iran is due to the Israeli influence with America. Like that's kind of like Israel's basically making their civilian nuclear program tantamount with having a nuclear weapons program is the is the most influential reason why the U.S. wants to keep this antagonistic relationship going on.
yep,
But yeah, like oil stuff comes into it as well. I mean, there's always more than one factor
of
that
course.
affects these
That's
geopolitical
yeah, that's
these
geopolitics.
events, these international events.
Well, so when I saw that article, right, initially I was just looking up, what's up with the dip in the oil price? Why did it go back up again suddenly? And then I realized, like, oh shit, there's been a bunch of like random developments that are going on right now, in the Straits of Hormuz, specifically around Iran. And so I kind of want to start from like the earliest point. It's been a little bit of a tit for tat going on lately. So the first place I want to talk about, this is not confirmed, but it's on pretty good evidence that it was Iran. So on the 2nd of April, a U.S. flagged box ship, I don't know what that is, it's like a container ship, I guess, was reportedly surrounded by some Iranian patrol boats in the Straits of Hormuz. It took place like 16 miles off the coast, nautical miles off the coast of Abu Musa. And we don't know what the name of the vessel was, but apparently it was a feeder ship heading for the United Arab Emirates. So apparently 4 boats surrounded this vessel, and they identified themselves as Iranian forces apparently. And the guy on the radio calls them up and like asks them what's their nationality, like what type of cargo are they hauling, whatever. So I'm guessing the people on the ship are thinking like, shit, it's fucking pirates or something like that, or they're gonna like commandeer the ship or something like that. But apparently, no attempt was made to divert or board the box ship. Um, the ship itself actually tried to make a mayday call to some coalition warships, but they didn't get an answer in time. And then eventually the vessels just left, right? So they just harassed them for a bit and left. So that was kind of like the start of this like recent spat. A couple days later, on April 4th, apparently some evidence started popping up that Iran deployed an array of anti-ship missiles and large rockets overlooking the Straits of Hormuz. So apparently this came from amateur videos that popped up on like social media and shit, right? But some quote geospatial analysis. I don't even know what the hell that means, by the way.
It means that satellite, it's like a bureau of intelligence bureau where they track they're basically like the eye in the sky
All right, word.
bureau of our intelligence.
Word. So, okay, the
They look at maps and
geospatial
stuff.
analysis, the eye in the sky, Big Brother saw it, confirmed it, right? And one of the batteries there was on, I'm going to butcher this, Keshem Island. I'm going to call it Keshem Island. Um, anyway, where that's situated is like right on the bend of the Straits of Hormuz. So it's like a perfect prime place to stick some anti-ship missiles in. Apparently, the images that they found showed weapons deployed beside like the coastal road, um, pointing at the straits, and it was like behind a protective sand berm. Uh, no one really knows if this was just like an exercise, a show of force, or something like that. But or even if it was intended to be seen or not, like it's possible that they were trying to do something covert and they just got caught. Um, Interesting nerd shit about it. They had a few different types of rockets that were identified. So Fajr 3 and Fajr 5 multiple launch rocket systems, so MLRSs. So bit on that, the Fajr 3 carries 12 240 millimeter or 9.5 inch rockets. They have a range of 27 miles and can carry a pretty big warhead. And this is the crazy part: all 12 rockets can be loosed off in just under 2 minutes. So they can throw these things downrange real quick. Um, and then they also sell these larger Fajr fives. These have much bigger range.
Faja, Faja, Faja,
Fa-
Faja, Faja.
Yo
Can you hear
Faja,
me? Your
um,
Faja. We have your Faja.
we have your Faja 3 and your
Also,
Faja 5. Anyway, the Fajr 5s, they can hit targets 45 miles away, so they got a longer range, but they only really carry 4 on each launcher. But from their positions, it's estimated that they can reach all the way across the Straits of Hormuz, and the larger Fajr 3s can do the entire strait, right? Um, so, pretty deadly. We're talking like pretty similar to how North Korea has a bunch of artillery right there on the along the DMZ in the mountains, right? Like if they wanted to, they can ruin your day with these rockets, including U.S. ships. I might add, just because of how quickly they can loose off. It's just a giant barrage of them. Like our anti-missile and rocket systems can probably catch most of them, but not all of them. There's also on that island specifically a bunch of missile sites and naval facilities. So this isn't surprising that they're putting these things there. But there's like an underground tunnel for boats and submarines there apparently, which sounds pretty like James Bondian, like James Bond bad guy shit. Um, so they're building up their navy. Iran is. There's some announcements that they made that they're working on a large submarine, which is hilarious because I guess they're giving up on the midget subs. I'm not joking. That's what they're called. We did a whole episode on midget subs, and they're also trying to do it like a 6,000-ton destroyer. But like, good luck with that. So they're moving around. They're harassing some people in the straits. They are positioning some missiles. And I don't have this written down anywhere, but there's also they've been maneuvering really, really close to U.S. warships. In one instance, they came within 30 yards. Excuse me. Was it 10 meters or 30 yards? Something like that. Mad close. Too close for comfort. And this prompted Trump to be like, yo, just shoot at them. Like, go for it. If they come close and they bother you, shoot them. Obviously, Iran's saying that they were operating correctly and like the U.S. warships were in their way and they didn't follow protocols. Typical response from Iran there. But they're definitely making moves there, and probably the biggest move. And I think this kind of goes along with the idea of them and their nuclear desires, and the regional powers, namely Israel, pointing the finger and saying, "Hey, they're going to get the bomb." I think this is probably a pretty good evidence of that in Israel's favor. But just today,
are they 6 months away again?
I guess maybe they're closer now.
Are they closer? Are they finally 5 months away from building a nuclear warhead?
They might be.
Are they 5 months? If you're telling me they're 5 months away from building a nuclear warhead, then I'm gonna screw COVID-19. We have way more important things to worry about. We need to immediately start carpet bombing Tehran if they're 5 months away.
I don't know. I don't know
They're five and a half
exactly
months
how many
away.
months, but this would certainly help them. And part of the nuclear program, obviously, you have to build the nuke, right? You have to get enough material to create a nuclear device. You also have to miniaturize it to make it small enough to put on a warhead, like on a rocket. But a big part of this is the actual rocket itself, like the delivery system. And I think you'll probably start seeing a lot of news coming out of Israel and just stuff, all around the world that are anti-Iran that are going to say that this is definitely like the sign that they're fucking around. So today, Iran placed a military satellite in orbit. Not the first time that they put a satellite in orbit, but the first time that they put a military satellite in orbit, right? And that's an important distinction that we'll talk about in a second. But the IRGC, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, they launched a small spacecraft into orbit on Wednesday, today, and this is coming after like a string of failures, right? They've tried this a bunch of times in the last couple of years. The military craft, they called it Noor, Noor. It means light in Persian. Basically flew on a multi-stage Qased rocket, according to the Iranian state media. So the Iranian officials didn't actually post any advanced notice of the launch. It came from the Sharud missile range in the northeastern part of the country, but they didn't actually give anyone a notice about it. U.S. military tracked two objects in orbit associated with the launch, and also there's just publicly available orbital tracking data to confirm the fact that they did in fact do this. So this is not a hoax. They definitely did do something. So it was their first successful satellite launch by Iran since February of 2015. But notably is like the vehicle, the delivery system, which is that Qased rocket, right, which hadn't been used successfully before to put something in space. And of course, the implication here is like if you can put something in space with this rocket, you can use it as an intercontinental ballistics missile, 100%. Like that's like they're very very close to the same thing, right? You remember that the rockets that we use to send people to space, in the U.S. were based on the V2 intercontinental ballistic missiles developed by the Germans during World War II. It's the same technology, just used differently. So evidently this was the criticism we're getting out of the U.S. and many other places is that this is proof that Iran was developing a secret military space program, and specifically that they were building a missile program to test for using their nuclear devices. So Mike Pompeo, Fat Man, U.S. Secretary of State here, obviously condemns.
National Security Advisor.
I'm sorry?
It's the National Security Advisor.
A U.S. Secretary of State.
Mike Pompeo?
Yeah. Did I get that wrong?
Mike Pompeo is a security advisor.
Oh, well, I pulled this right from Spaceflight Now, so they got it wrong. And I did too, so my apologies, guys. Anyway, Pompeo condemned the launch. He said, the Iranians have consistently said that these missile programs were disconnected from their military.
Oh, you're right. I'm an idiot. I don't know why I said that. You're right. He is a Secretary of State.
Okay, cool. Secretary of State confirmed.
Dumb.
Starting over. The Iranians have consistently said that these missile programs were disconnected from their military, that these were purely commercial enterprises. And I think today's launch proves that what we've been saying all along here in the United States. The IRGC, a designated terrorist organization, launched a missile today. It's not every day that I kind of agree with Mike Pompeo, but like he's coming at this, I think, from an angle that I wouldn't have arrived at. He's not wrong. It is a missile, or it can be used as a missile. And it definitely is concerning that they didn't put anyone on notice that they were doing this. And it also is concerning that this is a military exercise, but it's not out of the unusual for any military that has space technology to launch satellites, right? Like we do it all the time. There are plenty of countries all over the world to do it. Um, I mean, do I think it's missile test? I guess yes. It technically is, right? If you can put a satellite into space, then you can also arm, arm it with a nuclear warhead and use it as a ballistics missile. But I think you're barking up the wrong tree here. The real issue would be whether or not they're developing the nuclear weapon in the first place. The warhead. They still have to miniaturize it, right? And it's not just a matter of like, oh, they got a great rocket, like they can blow up everyone in the world. Like they still need to make a miniaturized version of a nuclear warhead to fit on top of that and to be able to deliver that payload, thousands of miles away. So, this is only half, if that. This is like a third of the way there. So I don't know. Maybe we're 5.5 months to getting the bomb.
They're 5.5 months. I can't believe I got John Bolton for confused. I didn't get it confused with Mike Pompeo, Fat Boy, but for some reason I got their positions rotated in my head.
I mean, I don't blame you, man. The whole cabinet moves around
But
so quickly.
they're basically the same
Yeah,
the same
same
person.
different
Just one
time.
was fired and one was not fired.
Right.
But what I really don't think that they have the desire. See, we're at the point with like Iran's missile capabilities. There's been so much like false information about it that it's like it's impossible for me to trust narratives without doing deep searches into it like that.
I mean, there's just some questionable shit about it, right? On the one hand, I'm like, yo, they're just putting a satellite into space. They have the right to do that, I guess, as a
But
sovereign
at this
nation.
point, though, I wouldn't even. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but, there's nothing they can do in regards to sanction relief. There's really no criteria they can meet that will give them any type of sanction relief.
Right.
So, like, they could be just be getting to the point where, like, fuck it, why not just make a bomb?
Yeah, it's possible.
Like just
Quick, while
fuck
all
it.
the Americans are,
Why don't
are
why don't why don't
quarantining,
we
let's make a
quit?
bomb.
Let's like there's no we're never gonna get sanction relief. We're always gonna be given the status of global pariah.
Right.
Who knows? They just literally assassinated our pretty much the second most powerful person in the country. Like why why are we standing here with our pants down right now?
Right.
Like why don't we start developing better weapons capabilities to
Right.
prevent either an invasion or to help secure the Strait of Hormuz more than we have it. So, I mean, there sounds like a motive right there at the very least, because definitely seems like they're completely out of options.
Yeah, and I mean, if you take all of the things that I described to you, here from harassing ships in the straits, moving around missile and rocket launchers, positioning them to be able to cover the whole Strait of Hormuz, launching a satellite what could amount to an intercontinental ballistic missile, and harassing U.S. warships, harassing. I have no idea what the real truth is out of that, but if you take all of those things together, it does kind of sound like there's a bit of an escalation going on. But then again, maybe this is all just nonsense that the media is drumming up to get us not to think about coronavirus. Who knows?
I think the media wants us to think about coronavirus. If anything, it'd be vice versa.
Yeah.
Like they would pull some real shit and try not to talk about it at all.
Mm.
If they're going to escalate things further, they'll do it while the people are distracted.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think that it would be, it would be the agenda, the focus on Corona while there was more tension building up in the Middle East rather than vice versa.
Maybe. We'll see, man. I'll keep watching this, and we'll see what comes of it. But hopefully, no escalations, because like honestly, our sailors can't be out there, fucking around fighting our war during a pandemic. Like that's just crazy, And I know that we wanted to talk about this, but we're running out of time. But just the idea of how the Spanish flu moved around, and
Yeah.
you know
So we wanted to talk about this. We're kind of running out of time right now, so we're not going to get a chance to speak about this as much as we plan to do it. But I think that this may warrant its own episode.
Hmm.
So for those of you who are familiar with the journalist Gareth Porter, he wrote a piece about the Spanish flu, and the piece is about essentially how the spread went from how the Spanish flu spread from essentially the United States
Kansas somewhere,
to
right? Yeah.
yeah, it started out in Kansas, and it in Haskell County, Kansas, at a farm, and it spread to a U.S. training base, which then spread to a ship that then spread to Europe, which then mutated and became more deadly. That came back to the United States. And there's a whole bunch of like political scandal. The reason why it's called the Spanish flu, and this is just this is something I've known about in the war, but I never really spent too much time on this chapter of the war. The fact that there was a pandemic going on in the latter part in 2018.
Hmm.
Um, it's interesting
1918,
because
not 2018.
yeah, excuse me, 1918. I think the corona is getting me right now. It's making me all confused. That's one of the symptoms, right?
Who knows?
So what he, what the crux of the article is that the reason why it's called the Spanish flu is because Spain was the only place where there wasn't intense amounts of censorship in the press because they were neutral, and the U.S. and Britain and France and Germany, all the major players in the war, were heavily censoring their media, so they weren't reporting the pandemic, and
Right.
Spain was the only one who was doing it. So that's how it
It came to be
became
known.
known as the Spanish flu. But reading this article, he goes into essentially how it started in the U.S. and went back and came back and hit Massachusetts and then Philadelphia because there was these war rallies. There was uh, these rallies for the troops. There was these rallies to purchase war bonds and things like that, which just caused mass crowds. And 50 million people died worldwide, or at least that's the estimate.
Right.
And about 675,000 died in the U.S. alone due
Mm.
to this pandemic. So I thought it was interesting how that spread around. But the thing is, though, the reason why we don't want to kind of end it right there as a discussion, because we want to discuss all the possibilities of where the flu came from,
The
because
Spanish flu, that is.
this is a well, maybe it's completely 100% true. Gareth Porter is a great journalist. However, I want to look at. We both agreed that we should probably look at the other origins and the other theories of where the flu came from before like dedicating an episode. So think of this as kind of like I guess a pre-episode to the episode that we would like to do on the origins of the Spanish flu and how it spread. And does that sound fair?
Yeah, it sounds totally fair, man.
Yeah, because I don't want to like just come with the narrative that I want to research the different narratives about the flu before we do a complete breakdown. Because I was reading I was getting into some of this a lot of this week, and it's really fascinating. It's very interesting, the different hypotheses and theories. But I have to say, the Gareth Porter article is very, very convincing. It's called the war. The article is called, just so you guys can read it. It's called "How Generals Fueled 1918 Flu Pandemic to Win Their World War." It's on the American Conservative. I'll post that in the link. But I think we should wrap this one up because I'm getting tired and
Yeah, man.
I want to. So rate and review the podcast. If you guys are listening, we have a bonus episode on our YouTube channel that we recorded over the weekend with our friend Phil. He does a podcast called A Boy Named Sue. and we did a kind of a bonus episode where we kind of just chilled and talked and debated on coronavirus and stuff like that. And it was a fun time. So if you want access to that, just go to our YouTube channel and listen there for extra content. And yeah, rate and review, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching it. And Danny, anything to say on your side?
Wash your hands and stay at home.
Stay at home. Try and make me. There's a 4% chance I have it. No, I don't. I have zero clue. I'm staying in, but that's just because, you know,
Abundance of
what
caution.
we can do. It's how we fight.
It's an abundance of caution. That's totally fine. All right. I think we can wrap this one then. Peace.
All right. Peace.